Hi and welcome to my 9th video in the series about energy and ecosystems. So today we're going to be looking at some more exam questions. So like the previous exam questions, these are all taken from the Biology Unit 4 AQA paper. I believe this one is from June 2010. So the question is, scientists measured the mean temperature in a field each month between March and October. The table shows the results. The gross productivity of the plants in the field was highest in July. Use the data in the table to explain why. So they're asking why the gross productivity. So in this instance, the gross productivity is always linked to the amount of biomass produced or the amount of material produced from photosynthesis. And so you have to explain why in July you would assume the gross productivity of the plant will be highest then. And so it's hotter then, and so this is linking to enzymes. So the warmer it is, essentially allows the enzymes to work quicker, and so you form more enzyme substrate complexes, something along those lines, and from there you therefore produce more photosynthesis. So you link in the fact that the enzymes will work quicker, and you mentioned photosynthesis, that gives you 2 marks. So the next one underneath that, give the equation that links gross productivity and net productivity. The gross equals the net plus the respiratory loss or respiration. You could reverse it where you had the net productivity equals gross minus respiratory loss or respiration. Either's fine. B part 2. The net productivity of the plants in the field was higher in August than July. Use the equation to part B part 1 and your knowledge of photosynthesis and respiration to suggest why. So it's saying that in August there was a greater net productivity than there was in July, than you would expect by looking at the temperatures, because gross productivity would be higher. You would expect it to be greater in July, but in fact it was August, and so you've got to explain why the net productivity would be higher. So the first point, obviously there's got to be less loss through respiration. So mentioning that in August there's less respiration loss or less energy loss through that. You could also mention the fact that the light dependent reaction is less affected by the temperature increase, so you could mention that, but probably the most obvious second mark is this reduces the overall energy loss in the system, and so probably mark 1 and mark 3 are the easy ones to get out of that. 2C, the horse was kept in the field from March to October. During these months the horse was able to eat more than it needed to meet its minimum daily requirements. Just how the horse use the extra nutrients absorbed. Again, this could be about horses, it could be about anything. So how extra nutrients are used if they're not utilised in respiration. So they could be stored, so as fat, glycogen or biomass, and then they could be used for something like growth, movement, reproduction, something along those lines. So essentially anything that isn't their minimum daily requirements. 2D, the horse's mean energy expenditure was higher in March than it was in August. Use the information in the table to suggest why. Well, if you compare March with August, March clearly is much colder, and so it's got to be something along those lines. So we know that if it's colder in March, there's going to be more energy lost in March, and it's used to maintain the body temperature, so more heat will be generated. And obviously that's done via respiration or metabolism, so any of those is a valid mark. Okay, so moving on. Intensive rearing of livestock produces large quantities of waste. Some farmers use an anaerobic digester to get rid of the waste. An anaerobic digester, microorganisms break down the large organic molecules in the waste. This produces methane, which is a useful fuel. It also produces organic substances that can be used as a natural fertiliser. So, suggest 2 advantages of processing waste in anaerobic digesters rather than in open ponds. And so you can see here that it's a sealed system, so therefore some of the gases are not released, so that's fine. The fact that you can control everything, the fact that it's sealed, means you can control other variables. The product therefore can be produced, and so you can tap off the thing that you actually need. And obviously, if you're doing this in an open pond, it may have a knock-on effect to that ecosystem, and so that may be quite negative. 3A Part 2. The anaerobic digester has a cooling system, which is not shown in the diagram. Without this cooling system, the digester would soon stop working. I'll explain why. And so obviously, because the organisms in there will be respiring, it causes an increase in the temperature, release of heat, and obviously with heat comes the effect on enzymes. So higher the temp, more likely the enzymes will denature, and therefore the microorganisms are killed.